Well, good evening, and on behalf of the Village of Carrion and the Board of Zoning, Planning, and Appeals, I'd like to hereby call this meeting to order on this Thursday, June the 28th at approximately 7:30 p.m. We have a quorum of members, and at this time, I'd like to ask our Director of Community Development, Mr. Simmons, to please call the roll.
Williams, Pippin,
Here.
Graziano,
Here.
O'Laughlin, Kretschmer,
Here.
Jasper, Corey.
Here. Thank you very much. We invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Koff, I know you may not be familiar with the process. It's not particularly complicated. The way we'll do this, just to kind of give you the background, is that we ask our Director of Community Development, Mr. Simmons, he gives an overview of the request, and then some of the members of the ZPA may have questions for Mr. Simmons. And then upon conclusion, we'll ask you to present your petition if there's something that Mr. Simmons would have missed. And again, the ZPA members might have some questions for yourself. We open it up to the public, and as you can see, there's no one beside yourself in the audience, but it is part of the procedure. And that's why we're saying that you signed in. That becomes part of the public record, and this does get recorded and posted onto the village website. It's a YouTube video, and it's a matter of public record. And then we close that part of our meeting. The ZPA members may have some questions about the application, and then we take a vote. We deliver that vote back to the elected officials, and they become the final arbiter of our discussion tonight. So that's our process. But before we begin, I just need to do a couple of housekeeping items with the men, and then we'll be right after the application. So, gentlemen, in your package, you would have received the meeting minutes from our last meeting. And I'm wondering if you have any questions or comments about the meeting minutes. There would have been two separate approval of meeting minutes, one for 156 Sherwood Drive and the other being 880 Feinberg Drive. So hearing none, the chair on a voice vote will seek general consent on the meeting minutes of June the 14th for 156 Sherwood Drive. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Chair will seek general consent of the meeting minutes June 14, 2018 for 880 Feinberg Drive for the plat of subdivision, plat of dedication. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much, gentlemen. So at this time, we'll call village case number 18 ZPA 06001. The petitioner is Mr. Tom Koff. The request is a variance to increase the maximum permitted lot coverage, section 17.20.040. And the location is 44 Essex Lane. And at this time, we'll ask our Director of Community Development, Mr. Simmons, to please give us an overview of the case.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. The request this evening, as mentioned, is for a lot coverage variance for the subject property located at 44 Essex Lane. The property is located about mid-block between, or just south of Meridian. Is it Meridian Street? Excuse me. The petitioner is proposing to install an above-ground pool in the rear yard. As currently proposed, or as proposed, the 24-foot diameter pool would add about 450 to 60 square feet of impervious area to the property. There are no other improvements that are planned to the property as part of this project. Petitioner is just seeking to install the pool in the rear yard, which, as you see in the slide, would comply with the minimum setback to the rear property line for an accessory structure. This slide shows the required bulk standards for the property and existing conditions versus the proposed condition. There's no change for the front yard or interior side yard setbacks to either side of the property. The rear yard property rear setback currently is 65 feet to the primary structure. It would be 9 feet to the proposed accessory structure. But the installation of the pool would increase the overall lot coverage from 34.2%, which currently complies with our maximum 35% code requirement, to roughly 39.2%. Otherwise, the project will comply with other code requirements for setback and other code provisions. Within the zoning ordinance, as the zoning board is aware, there are various standards that need to be established for the consideration of a variation, which are summarized in the slide. In general, the property cannot yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under the standards set out in the title. The relief proposed will not alter the character of the locality, and the relief proposed is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the regulations, among other standards in there. Staff believes that the proposed improvement is compliant with these standards, as it is an above-ground pool that's proposed for the residents. There are other properties in the area that do have pools installed or similar improvements installed, and the proposed variances in keeping with variances that have been supported by the village in the past. The approximately 5% increase is similar to a variance that was just approved by the village board within the last few weeks for another above-ground pool within the community. Therefore, staff believes that the proposal meets the standards, and if the ZPA concurs with that assessment, would recommend that the ZPA recommend approval of the following motion. Approval of a variance to allow an increase in the required lot coverage from 35% to 40% for the property located at 44 Essex Lane.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simmons. Gentlemen, questions for Mr. Simmons?
I don't know if it would be for Mr. Simmons or Mr. Kopp, but the platted survey I'm looking at seems to have, let's call it a kidney-shaped patio and sidewalk coming off the driveway. Is
Right.
that existing?
That's how it is now.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you didn't have the survey officially updated,
After,
just,
no.
okay.
No, it's like a half guitar.
that's fine.
The concrete guy got, it was, when we bought the house, it was the house with the black cloud over it. The concrete was cracked and pushed up, and every shutters were falling off. It was really a mess. So we have been redoing the whole house for the last 12 years.
So maybe what I could suggest, Mr. Kopp, if you would like, to continue the process, since the gentlemen don't have any additional questions. Do you have any other things to add? Because I think sometimes it's hard to hear when you're there. So if you just state your name for the record and your address.
Tom Kopp. So I'm trying to think what else I could say. I mean, we redid the concrete in the driveway, and we widened it a little bit, 2008, I think. The swing set and everything is gone now, so that picture from Google Maps is a few things different now.
I see.
So I took the swing set down, and there used to be a weeping willow tree there, but the wind took it down. And it took my fence, and it went into the neighbor's yard, so I had that taken away, and then their pile is all grass now, but, so I'm trying to think, what else? Just trying to make a nice backyard,
Understand. So gentlemen, any other questions for Mr. Kopp? Thank you very much.
All right.
And for Mr. Simmons, just so we state this for the record, if the new UDO gets approved as we discussed it previously, and it's a year from now and the village board has blessed the new UDO, what would happen in this example?
In this example, if the village board approved the proposed changes that we have now, this would not require variance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simmons. All right, gentlemen, so before we call the vote, any additional questions about this particular petition? Okay. So at this time, the chair will entertain a motion to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees approval of a variance to allow an increase in the required lot coverage from 35% to 40% for the property located at 44 Essex Street.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Mr. Simmons, please call the roll.
Pippin?
Yes.
Graziano?
Yes.
Kretschmer?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes. So, Mr. Kopp, you have a favorable recommendation. We tried to make this process as simple as we can. And I should state for the record that I did not open up the record to the public because there's no one assembled beyond Mr. Kopp in the audience, but that is part of the process. And the next step is to simply stay in touch with Mr. Simmons. I don't know if you're required to be at the next meeting, but it's usually part of general consent, but he knows this part of the process far better than I do.
It'd be July 17th, the village board, as we discussed. It'll be at 6 p.m. that evening, but with the unanimous recommendation, it's on the consent portion of the agenda. So there might be no discussion on it whatsoever. But just in case it gets pulled off, I do recommend you be there. But once it's voted on, you're free to leave that meeting.
So I wish you every success on your project.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good luck with activities tomorrow night.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah. Keep an eye on it.
There you go. All right. So, gentlemen, before we adjourn our meeting, was there anything that anyone needed to address? Chair will seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.